Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7. With me this evening to discuss today's news is Day Tucker, our Rural Affairs correspondent. Welcome to the programme again, Day.
Thank you.
And now, this evening, we are reporting on the First Minister's demand for Section 30 transfer of powers for IndyRef 2020. The democratic case for Scotland having the ability to choose its own constitutional future is published today in a new document. The paper, entitled Scotland's Right to Choose, Putting Scotland's Future in Scotland's Hands, lays out the detailed case for how and why a country should be able to have the choice of independence in a referendum. The document includes a specific call on the UK government to enter discussions about the Scottish Government's mandate for giving the people of Scotland a choice, and to agree legislation with the Scottish Government that would put beyond doubt the Scottish Parliament's right to legislate for a referendum on independence. Launching the document at Bute House in Edinburgh, the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, said, "It's a fundamental democratic principle that decisions on Scotland's constitutional future should rest with the people who live here. As this document lays out, the Scottish Government has a clear democratic mandate to offer the people a choice of that future in an independence referendum, and the UK Government has a democratic duty to recognise that. Last week's general election has only strengthened that mandate, and today I am publishing the constitutional and democratic case for Scotland having that choice. It's rooted in the principle of self-determination, the material change of circumstances since 2014 exercise of that right, and in the democratic mandate that exists for offering the choice afresh. In a voluntary association of nations such as the UK, it cannot be in the interest of any part for our right to choose our own future to be conditional or time-limited or a one-off." So, Day, here we are. The First Minister is basically laying down the law here. She's not asking, she's demanding here, I think.
And that's very welcome change.
Do you think this is a change in tone from the First Minister?
Definitely, and it's a change in tone.
We are therefore today calling on the UK Government to negotiate and agree a transfer of power that would put beyond doubt the Scottish Parliament's right to legislate for a referendum on independence. Together with the constitutional and democratic case for that transfer of power, we are also publishing the draft legislation that would give effect to it. So it seems like the SNP government is not only demanding that this happen, they've also actually prepared most of the groundwork in advance.
Yes.
So they're actually giving this to Boris Johnson on a plate virtually.
Yes. Making it easy for him.
As easy as possible.
As possible. Because he won't be able to think clearly about anything like this, whereas the First Minister has been working on this with her party for quite some time. And I think saying that the gloves are off perhaps is a bit harsh, because...
You think maybe it's just the time to be a little bit more combative and a little bit more assertive?
No, I wouldn't use the word combative. Assertive, yes, but the manner in which she presented this was cool, calm, measured, and
rational,
irrefutable, very rational.
I noticed very specific words being used in this, particularly in describing, I'm trying to find this again, the way that she describes the United Kingdom as a voluntary union of nations.
Yes.
And in a voluntary union, if somebody is not willing to go through with something, then they're no longer volunteering in that capacity.
Yes.
And so the union in that case would need to end.
Yes.
Because one party is no longer happy with the direction of
east and west of the border. That has been clear for quite some time, that this is a disunited union, and it's all down to the centralist type of politics that are so loved by the Westminster system. And that has to change.
Well, there's also been a question, well, which Nicola has tried to answer here. And she says here, in this context, the question is often posed to me, what will you do if the Prime Minister says no? And she says, the document we are publishing today turns that question on its head. It's for the Prime Minister to defend why he believes the UK is not a voluntary union of equal nations.
That's right, yes.
Now, this is questioning the legitimacy of the union.
Aha.
It's not just asking or even demanding a document be signed.
Yeah.
This is basically, it's one leader asking another leader to justify his position.
Yes, yes.
So do you think Boris Johnson is just going to, as he has threatened to do, return this document unopened, or will he read it?
I honestly don't know whether he'll bother to read it or not. I mean, Theresa May, it has been reported, didn't read the white paper that was sent down to her when Brexit was decided upon. The First Minister sent down her proposals, and Theresa May dismissed it out of hand.
Is this because she intended to say it's not the right time and therefore she wasn't going to consider it?
Possibly that, but the overriding factor will be the arrogance that seems to be embedded in the people in that particular party as time has gone on, and the arrogance is manifesting itself more and more because of the need for Scotland to have independence.
Well, she's directly challenging the Prime Minister here, and one of the other parts of this statement, she goes on to say, it's for him to set out why he doesn't believe people of Scotland have a right to self-determination.
Yes.
It's for the Prime Minister to explain why he believes it's acceptable to ignore election after election in Scotland and to override a democratic mandate that's stronger than the one he claims for his Brexit deal. Mm-hmm. Again, this is kicking the ball back to Boris Johnson and saying, come on, you've got to justify yourself here. Yeah.
And that was so clear. The difference between what was it, 45% we got?
48.
48%.
I think, no, beg your pardon, 45 we got 45, here, and 43.2
and 43 down south. Yeah. So if Boris thinks that that's a mandate for Brexit and, you know, his party.
If it's sauce for the goose, as they say.
Absolutely.
Sauce for the gander.
Yeah.
Well, moving on from this, the Referendum Scotland bill has actually now passed at Holyrood. Now, it's passed another stage. It's not passed completely, I believe. The Scottish Parliament today passed the Referendum Scotland bill, which provides a framework for referendums to be held in Scotland. The bill's framework sets the standards and regulations on which all future referendums in Scotland will be based, with the detail of any specific future referendum being put to the Scottish Parliament in a bill. The Referendum Scotland bill includes a requirement that online campaign material contains an imprint showing the name and address of the person responsible.
Yes.
So they're going to be making it much clearer who is putting out various stories and memes.
Yes.
The maximum civil penalty by the Electoral Commission can impose on rule breakers, it's increased from £10,000 million. So they're really going to try and stamp out fake news, unsubstantiated rumours, lies.
And how interesting that yet again Scotland is taking the lead on something that an awful lot of people down south want to happen.
Basically stamping out electoral corruption and misdirection and misinformation.
Yes. Which of course won't suit Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings.
Except that Mr Johnson has been very neglectful in terms of publishing his own report on the alleged Russian interference in the last general election and also in the Brexit vote. The Constitutional Relations Secretary Michael Russell has described the passing of the Referendum Scotland bill today as an important step forward in allowing Scotland to choose its own future. The rules approved by MSPs will ensure any future referendum covered by the bill met the highest international standards. Now, this is another important point,
isn't it?
Yep.
Highest international standards.
Not just British standards.
No, definitely not British standards.
British standards seem to have fallen quite low recently.
Yes.
So, with this legislative framework in place, it only requires a short bill for an independence referendum to be held once the transfer of power, which puts holding a referendum beyond challenge, is devolved to the Scottish Government. So Mike Russell, I think, making it very clear to Boris Johnson that all he really has to do is sign his signature on a piece of paper, and he can make all of this hassle go away, and stop having to listen to us Scots banging on about a referendum.
Yes, yes.
Legal changes are now required to keep pace with the way campaigns are now conducted, to protect the space for rational, respectful debate.
Yes.
And it must be clear who is behind an online campaign activity, while those who break the rules should be properly sanctioned. Now, this is an interesting use of words again. Many people have been pulled up over the past few years for misbehaviour during elections.
Yes.
Ruth Davidson was
Yes.
one. I can think of also Ian, the Liberal Democrat, Ian Carmichael.
Alistair Carmichael.
Alistair Carmichael,
yes.
both involved in putting out misleading stories. But
well, Alistair's was really bad.
yeah.
That was shocking.
I
That
would
was a frame-up.
So do you think this would be a deterrent to that? £500,000
I'd like
fine?
to think so. Although, when you look at the kind of money, the dark money that floats between these parties, including the Liberal Democrats, who
Yes.
seem to be able to pull money from all sorts of organisations like the Roundtree Trust.
I heard it may be a rumour that Joe Swinson and Zach Goldsmith are to be elevated to the House of Lords,
Oh,
despite
surprise.
having lost in the general election.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if it's true. This was a rumour I saw today. Anyway, moving on. The questions used in referendums. Oh, I beg your pardon, I missed a little bit here. The Referendum Scotland Bill introduces tighter controls for social media campaigning, bigger fines for those who break the rules, and incorporates the Scottish franchise, meaning 16-year-olds and EU citizens will be eligible to vote. Now, I'm assuming they also mean 17-year-olds in that as well.
Yes, yes,
They
I'm
wouldn't
sure they
obviously
do.
leave them out.
Yes.
So that would include everyone
Yes.
in the
Now,
country.
This presumably we're talking about the Scottish Electoral Commission would have the power.
Yes, I believe so. The Electoral Commission, as far as I understand it at the moment, was recently powers were devolved to Scotland for
Right.
it.
Right.
But I don't know how far the powers go. I think we might need to do another programme on that one. I'm just hearing it's one organisation across the UK that has a Scottish branch, a distinct
Yes.
Scottish
Well, I'd
branch.
like to know what powers do we have over the big organisation, the Electoral Commission?
Well, that's something else that needs to be transparent, I think, and a lot of people are worrying about this at the
Yes.
moment, about how fair a referendum might be.
Yes.
The questions used will also be tested by the Electoral Commission to establish that they're clear, transparent and neutral. In other words, they don't have any bias one way or the other. They make a statement and ask you if you agree with it. They will be valid for one parliamentary term, with a provision to extend the time limit on Scottish Parliament's approval. In addition, Parliament can ask for the Commission to review a question at any time. And commenting on the passing of the Referendum Scotland Bill, Scottish Greens co-leader Patrick Harvie said, robust framework legislation is something that we should have agreed across the entire chamber. Sadly, the other opposition parties resorted to performative partisanship, ignoring the fact that the Electoral Commission is satisfied with the changes made to the bill. It created a predictable division over a topic that wasn't even in the bill in front of us.
Yeah.
Any specific referendum, such as one on independence, will require a new bill and therefore come under the necessary scrutiny by Parliament and the Electoral Commission at that time. I anticipate that we'll hear the same point scoring going on again. The Scottish Greens look forward to the opportunity Scotland urgently needs to carry out a referendum on independence and to put Scotland's future into the hands of the people who count, that of the people who live here. The sooner we embark on the independence journey, the sooner we can put an end to the contempt in which the UK government has repeatedly shown to Scotland. So Patrick Harvie coming out fairly strongly there. I mean,
Yeah.
Patrick, I know, is fairly direct, but he's usually a little reserved when it comes to talking about independence, a little
Is he?
circumspect.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you feel about the Greens' role in the independence campaign so far? They seem to have taken rather a low profile, I think, until now.
Well, yes. Yes and no, because don't forget there was a wee bit of a furore at the start where they were perhaps going to stand some of their party against some seats that had narrow margins, like Pete Wishart's, for instance.
Yeah.
And then they decided, no, they'd hold back from that one. And Pete got a thumping majority.
Yeah, he certainly did. You were talking to me earlier on today. What was his majority eventually?
Just over 7,000, I think.
Wow,
which is really good. But it also highlights what was going on in 2017 to make the majorities really small.
There are a lot of theories about this, aren't there?
Yes.
About the fact that the campaign was not run in a way which combated the Tories' basic no to IndyRef 2 campaign.
Yeah.
And a little bit like, I actually think that the campaign was a little bit like Labour's failed campaign recently.
Yes.
In the recent general election, it was focusing on what would be classed as normal things like health, education, and so on. I don't know, do you feel that the SNP kind of missed the target with that previous?
I think in retrospect, perhaps they haven't pulled out the stops, or they didn't pull out the stops the way they have done in this election. I might be wrong there, but I just feel it's been a much more energised campaign this time round, because the Yes movement really have put in so much effort in the marches, and it's been made quite clear to the First Minister and the SNP that if they don't get the finger out,
they'll lose support.
This
might be the last term if they don't do something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember at the time of the previous general election, when we did badly in 2017, or when the SNP did badly, thinking that they were running a very strange campaign. That it was almost as if they were scared to say the I word, the independence word, like it was anathema. Don't mention it. It's like Monty Python sketch, don't mention the war.
But then why did they need to? Because let's face it, Ruth Davidson did it for them.
That's true, but on the other hand, Ruth Davidson also won a whole lot of seats as a result of it.
She did, but that's where my suspicions are coming in. To me, there's something else going on there.
Do you think there was some foul play?
Well, I don't know if it was foul or not, but you know, I keep thinking about the Orange Order and the awful things that go on in the west of Scotland, and the influence.
Do you think the seeds of division were sown using the Orange Order and other organisations with a unionist ideology? Yes,
I mean, we've always had what is called Scotland shame, but it was dying down until that particular vote.
And of course, there is now talk, it is only talk that I've seen online recently coming from Scotland and Union particularly, about the idea of all three of the UK parties coming together to create a new super duper unionist, Scottish unionist party. Right. But I think this is just, a rumour, you know. But the interesting thing I think from our point of view is that this time the SNP got it right.
Yes. Oh yes, definitely. This rumour, I just wonder, because I had heard from somebody that a very wealthy person was going to bankroll the start of a new party. Now, I didn't question them too much, because whether it was what you're talking about, or whether it was a new party down south, or a new party up
again,
here,
it would most likely end up splitting the Conservative vote if they did it, and I think that's maybe why they didn't.
Yeah, yeah. The charitable side of me thinks, well, maybe this very wealthy person wants to start up a new wing of a Conservative party that is a more gentle, caring, old-fashioned kind of Tory.
There certainly are several Conservative pro-independence activists now online and saying things like that.
Yes, yes.
But the thing is, they are now behind independence and have left unionism behind. They're still conservatives. Yes. They still believe in a conservative ideology of business and of capitalism, free market economy, liberal, all the rest of that. But they don't hold this unionist grudge, this death grip. Right. And I think that's encouraging. Anyway, we're coming back now to what's been happening in Westminster now and the Queen's speech. The Prime Minister's programme for government is extremely similar to the Queen's speech from October, but there were a few additions to the Conservative Party's election manifesto. The main new piece of legislation is an NHS funding bill that would enshrine into law a £33.9 billion cash increase in funding by 2023 to 24, in what appears to be a largely symbolic move. Now, is this just a symbolic move? Are the Conservatives really serious about ensuring that the NHS is funded properly after 10 years of savage cuts? Would you believe it?
No.
What do you think might be behind this? Is this just they're trying to keep the Labour
politicking.
voters happy? That
Yes.
they converted a lot of Labour voters
Yes.
to vote.
Yes. I don't believe a
So
word
public
they
relations,
say.
really.
Public relations.
Well, the new counter-terrorism bill has also been added in the wake of the London Bridge terrorist attack. It would legislate for tougher sentences for serious terrorist offenders and a 14-year minimum term for the worst. Now, this is very typical of a Tory knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? Whenever there is any terrorist attack, they immediately reach for the legislation to increase the sentences.
Yes. Except that they haven't in the previous
yes, they said they
previous
might.
Attacks that there have been. They didn't bother, they just sat there.
Okay, well, there is a big list of bills here. I think I've got a copy of things which actually relate to Scotland in the Queen's speech. Let me just have a look here and see what we have. Okay, the UK bills which the Scottish Government currently expect to give rise to legislative consent procedure in Scottish Parliament. Now, this is where we have to agree or disagree with this new law.
Right.
Including, incidentally, the Withdrawal Agreement Bill, which we still haven't, our Parliament has not given consent to.
Right.
The Agriculture Bill, now this is very
Yes.
close to home for you. Now, the Agriculture Bill, I don't know what's in it yet. I don't know if you do.
No.
But if it's a Conservative Agriculture Bill, what might it contain? I mean, we know that during Brexit, we're going to lose a lot of European funding for
Yes.
farmers, for hill farmers and rural businesses everywhere, basically, in Scotland.
Well, they've gone for the populist ideal of transferring the money directly from farmers into the environment, and that sounds great, but if you do that, there is a cost to that, and that cost is that farmers might not be able to produce enough food.
If they're not
Which
making
means they're
enough
going
money.
to have to import, yes, and you lose farmers. You're going to have to import. You will get more intensive farming. You'll have fewer farms, but more intensive farming.
Well, I'm looking at the list of these bills, Day, here. It gives me an idea of what laws are going to be changed when they come back. We did already know that things like agriculture, building safety, in the Environment Bill, which you just mentioned, are all going to come under the scrutiny of the Conservative government, and they are going to probably take a scalpel to a lot of it and cut away all the things they think are red tape.
Yes.
And of course, the worrisome thing here, at least in my mind, is what happens with fracking if the environmental controls are removed.
Yes, exactly.
So there are also, I mean, there are bills here about air traffic management, an unmanned aircraft bill, so for UAVs, for drones, I believe.
Yes.
The broadband legislation, building safety, we've already spoken about, counter-terrorism sentencing and release, which I've just spoken about. The Environment Bill, yes. The European Union Withdrawal Agreement Bill, the Fisheries Bill, another one very important to Scottish interests.
And overriding that is the cod stocks at the moment are so depleted that they're in serious danger, which is why the EU have cut the quotas by 50%.
To preserve the stocks.
To preserve the cod stocks, but of course it's being spun as EU bad.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at this list. There's more to come, I think, in here, but I believe there is also a bill here which concerns transport workers striking, and I think this is, I believe, the government is trying to guarantee a minimum level of service. So again, they're going to try and ban striking. So again, another attack on trade
yes,
union
yes,
rights,
yes.
further eroding what's left
Yes.
of employment law, which we still have. And also, this one I think will also be of importance to you and other farmers, the Immigration and Social Coordination EU Withdrawal Bill. What will happen to our powers over immigration? Who can we hire if we need people to come and work in farms for particular tasks? You outlined
Yes.
a few yourself a few weeks ago on this programme,
Yes.
which were to do with your industry, which was sheep farming.
Sheep farming,
What,
yes.
what sort of individuals are needed
Well,
and where from?
for instance, we took lambs into Scotbeef the other day, and 2 of the vets were there, and they're both Spanish.
So veterinary
Yeah. And then
officials.
the guys in the cutting plant and the girls that also work in the cutting
Is
plant.
this the meat packing
Yes, where
industry?
they're cutting it into different bits
Portions,
of meat,
yeah.
portions and cuts, and they're very often from Eastern European countries.
Yeah.
And they're highly skilled. I mean, you
Very
can
skilled with a
imagine
knife.
with the knives, and they all have their own knives. They're kept in the factory, but don't you dare touch my knife, because
Because they have to wear, if I remember watching them, they have to wear chainmail gloves to protect their fingers from these boning knives. They're extremely
that's
sharp.
right. Yes.
So
yes.
highly skilled individuals. that-
highly skilled.
would we be able to train people here to do that, or would they even want to do these jobs? This
Well,
is the
but that's
question.
why we've got the Eastern Europeans. And I know that people keep saying, oh, it's because you pay them less. No, it's not.
Pay
It's
them.
because they come with a willingness to work and to learn, and they don't get paid less.
They get paid the same.
They get paid the same.
But what you're saying is that their work ethic is better.
Their work ethic is way better. I can remember when the Polish people came over first, and even out in my little rural area, there were a lot of Polish workers, and one guy came to me knocking at the door, and he wanted to do some work. And I paid him £10 an hour. And we're talking about five years ago at least,
what was
probably
his skill?
more. Well, he didn't have any particular skill
He's
apart
just
from his
willingness
work
to work.
ethic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what did you end up employing him to do? Just out of
Well, he did
interest.
that, and then he got a more permanent job
Uh-huh.
at an estate just along the road.
So he
And-
ended up staying.
Oh yes, yes. He's back in Poland now,
Uh-huh.
because I think when the pound got a bit dodgy, and he could sense that things were changing.
Maybe
here.
it wasn't going to be lucrative for him to
It
come
wasn't
over
as
anymore.
lucrative. Yes,
So
that's
he'll
right.
actually probably make the same
Yes.
money
It
back
would
home.
be similar to myself and my husband when
Mm-hmm.
during the 70s there was an opportunity to go and make our fortune in Australia.
I remember those
£10
days.
each it cost to get over there, and we worked, and we didn't half make some money. It was so easy to make money over in Australia.
So what brought you back?
I didn't like it.
Too hot?
The heat,
Aye.
the smell of dead possums on the road all the time.
Too many things that want to kill you.
Yes,
Yeah.
lots of beasties, red spiders.
Well, at least we have the benefit of you back here.
Yes, yes, but it was a great country to go and earn a living and
well,
make a fortune.
Believe it or not, I lived in Australia for nearly a year
Uh-huh.
and worked in Sydney for almost a year, and I loved it and didn't want to come home.
I bet.
And then my visa ran out and I had to come home.
Oh, yes.
And then I never went back,
Yes.
never managed to
Yes.
scrape the money
Well,
together again.
we did our 2-year stint, and then we did 6 months in New Zealand because it seemed silly not to
Because New
visit
Zealand is a massive sheep and lamb industry, isn't
but it's just an entirely different country from Australia.
it? Is it?
Totally
Well,
different.
its climate is completely different for a start.
Everything about it, yes, and probably the climate and the countryside reflects the kind of people that there are living there,
Yeah.
and
much-
also the history of
It's much
it.
greener, wetter, but
Yes.
one island's much more volcanic than the other, isn't it?
Yes, yes,
There's
yes.
always a risk of earthquakes,
yes,
it's just slightly.
yes, so it was
A
definitely
big drawback,
earthquakes.
that one.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I'd like to sort of move the conversation on a little bit further now. And we're talking about the legislation which the Queen's Speech outlined about the release dates for terrorist suspects or terrorist criminals who've been convicted. And this would also remove the option of early release. Now, this was the thing which caused the outrage
Yes.
when this man killed 2 innocent young people a few weeks ago. And this is for terrorists who receive an extended determinate sentence and move the earliest point of discretionary release from halfway to 2/3 of the way through the sentence for terrorists who are deemed less dangerous. It's always a gamble, though, putting somebody out on licence, particularly somebody who has a dangerous ideology.
Yes, yes.
Because they can fool the parole board. A third new element was the promise of espionage legislation. Now, this I hadn't heard of, which would provide the security services and law enforcement with the tools they need to disrupt hostile state activity. The details were vague. Well, I think we can understand why, but it suggested modernising existing offences to deal more effectively with espionage and creating new offences to criminalise other harmful activity conducted by or on behalf of the states, or I'm assuming the aggressor states,
yes,
or the ones who mean us ill. Two other new bills include one that insists on a minimum level of service for the railways. Now, this is something we mentioned just a few minutes ago, which would prevent strikes bringing trains to a halt. And another one on renting, which would abolish no-fault evictions and introduce lifetime deposits. Now, I'm not really sure about the second one. I think the idea of preventing strikes would be firmly inside the Tories' normal expected
behaviour,
remit,
yeah.
that they would be expected to want to try and stop strikes. The Queen herself did not dress in formal robes for the ceremonial
Go back to what do they mean by lifetime deposits?
Well, that's what I'm trying to establish. It would prevent strikes, okay, and it would abolish no-fault evictions. Now that suggests that they would only be allowed to evict people if they're at fault.
Yes.
And therefore
well,
there can be no amicable. Okay, well, anyway, let's get a bit further down. There's a lot of elements in this Queen's speech. So we're going to come down now and have a look at the reaction to the Queen's speech from the SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford, who criticised the Tories' Queen's speech for, first of all, failing to match the SNP government's commitment to health spending in the NHS, bringing forward its withdrawal agreement bill that will hit the economy and it will cost thousands of jobs. So, you know, the SNP obviously are going for this big time because they can see that the Tories are really not interested in doing the kind of things which the Scottish Government would like them to do. I'm trying to find anything on the Queen's speech coming from the Labour Party at the moment, but it's oh, hang on a second. I'm just going to back up a little bit. I may have gone past this. Okay, give me one moment to find this. Okay, in contrast, oh dear me, right, there's so much in this. Right, the SNP had warned that the Tories government were involved in reckless plans. Ooh. Oh, there we go. Okay, I found it now. Beg your pardon.
John McDonnell.
Yeah, so responding to the speech for the Labour Party, John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, has said this is more pomp and ceremony. The second Queen's speech in 3 months from a government hopelessly out of touch with the needs and hopes of the people of this country. There's nothing new in this Queen's speech for our NHS and public services or people struggling this Christmas, except for strong suggestions that the government wants to slash regulations on its way to making the UK a Trump-supporting tax haven. So, are we going to end up being a Trump-focused tax haven day? Is this the way that...
That was always the great plan.
And what do you think of the SNP's comments about this? How does this stack up? How do they compare the two governments and their approaches?
Where do they...
Well, I was going to say, how does the SNP's approach, their attack on this, how does that sit with or against the Tories' plans for Britain in future?
Well, in totally the opposite direction, because the Tories are, as we've just suggested, they've always been on the road to make this a tax haven. I mean, right from the very start, that's what Brexit was about. And that goes against the grain of everything that the Scottish Government aspires to, because they want us to pay fair taxes and have a fair society. one should lead to the other. Whereas the way the Tories are going, the exact opposite will happen, because they are creating even wider gap between those that have and those that have not.
Well, I think we'll leave the Queen's speech there just for the moment. I'd like to move on now to a story concerning the Rochdale Labour MP, who is the new Shadow Scottish Secretary.
Yes.
Now, Jeremy Corbyn has appointed Rochdale Labour MP Tony Lloyd to be the Shadow Scottish Secretary opposite Tory MP Alistair Jack in the House of Commons. Now, he replaces Leslie Laird, who lost her seat in the general election. Tony Lloyd will combine the role with the post of Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, so he's wearing two hats. The Labour Party has got one man doing two jobs. He's shadowing both the Scottish Secretary and the Northern Ireland Secretary. Seems...
But how on earth does Jeremy Corbyn think that will sit with Scottish voters, regardless of what party the Scottish voters vote for, to see a Rochdale MP where Ian Murray should be sitting?
Well, that's a curious thing, isn't it? Ian Murray is the last remaining MP.
The last remaining. He's obviously very good as an MP, or he wouldn't have been voted back in. Is it Edinburgh South
Yes,
he is?
I believe so.
Now, I mean, not that I'm defending him, but he must be a good MP, or he wouldn't have been voted back in.
Well, there is a little bit about Mr Murray here, and last week Labour lost all of its Scottish MPs except for Edinburgh South MP Ian Murray, and he had served previously as the Shadow Scottish Secretary.
Which makes it worse.
But he quit in protest at Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. So Jeremy Corbyn has obviously not forgotten this.
Right.
But he could, you would have thought, maybe Jeremy Corbyn could have chosen a Scottish person who's sitting as in an English constituency as a Labour MP.
Yes.
But for some reason he didn't.
Or shown a bit more, what's the word, moral stature, and overcome his personal feelings, and thought it's not right to impose an English MP on Scotland in that role.
It's possible, I suppose, that Ian Murray might not have been willing to serve.
That's true.
Because Jeremy Corbyn is still, at least nominally, in charge of the party. However, you know, it is odd that Mr Corbyn didn't choose a Scot. But then again, I suppose he didn't choose a Scottish Labour leader either, because, as we know, Richard Leonard is also from England.
Yes.
And yet he's heading up the Scottish branch of the Labour Party.
Yes.
Anyway, I'd like to move on to our next story tonight, which is a High Court says that the UK's £1,012 child citizenship fee is unlawful. The High Court in London has today ruled that the £1,012 fee that the Home Office charges children to register as British citizens is unlawful. In a landmark case brought forward by the Project for Registration of Children as British Citizens, which is called the PRCBC, the court found a mass of evidence showing that the fee prevents many children from registering British citizenship, leaving them feeling alienated, excluded, second best, insecure, and not fully assimilated into the culture and the social fabric of the UK. What a strange thing to do to children. To charge a child over £1,000 just to get a British passport. It seems outrageous.
And it's not the first time that they've done something like that and been proven to be acting unlawfully.
But it seems that this particular piece of legislation which has put this in place is definitely discriminating.
Yes.
Particularly against children not born in the UK.
Yes, yes.
The current administrative processing cost of a child's registration claim is only £372. The Home Office uses the remaining £640 to cross-subsidise the immigration system. They're using children as a cash cow to pay for the rest of the immigration system. That's horrific.
Oh,
I
it's
didn't
disgusting.
even know about this when this is a shock to me. Is this a sign of the times?
Yes.
I mean, Windrush all over again?
The Conservative times. They have not learned their lessons. They're pursuing a course of real radical right-wing nastiness.
Part of the hostile environment, but now they're picking on children.
Yes, yes. Easy targets.
Do you think this is part of a general pattern of behaviour
Yes.
on behalf of the Conservative Party to make sure that immigrants are so disillusioned and unhappy and miserable that they just won't want to come here anymore?
Well, that's already working.
But the thing is that...
But it reflects on us. It reflects on ordinary British citizens.
But I mean, today's judgment requires the Home Office to reconsider the fee and ensure that children's best interests are taken fully into account in doing so. The court has made clear that where a child has a right to British citizenship, it will generally be in the child's best interest to be registered as British, something which the Home Office had denied in evidence to the court. So children who, I mean, it's quite remarkable that they're saying that children who have a right to British citizenship, maybe come from a British dependency, like people who came in the Windrush generation, are actually being treated in the same way as somebody who's coming in almost as an illegal or as a refugee.
Yes.
In responding to the judgment, this is looking. Today's judgment requires the Home Office to reconsider the fee. Okay, the court has made it clear that the child's best interest will be served by being registered as British. In responding to the judgment, O, who I'm guessing is a pseudonym,
an individual,
who has lived in the UK her entire life and gave a witness statement to the court, said, "I'm glad to get to tell my story in court. I was born in this country and I've lived here all my life. I feel as British as any of my friends, and it's not right that I'm excluded from citizenship by a huge fee. I want to be able to do all the things my friends can. I don't want to have to worry that they will find out I don't have a British passport and think that that means I'm not the same as them." Solange Valdez Simmons, a solicitor for the two children, said that said that it's significant the court has recognised British citizenship is the right of these and thousands of other children, and it's that the consequence of blocking their registration rights is alienating and harmful. While recognition is a great step forward, the fact remains that tens of thousands of British children are growing up in this country deprived of their rights to its citizenship, including by this shamelessly profiteering fee. And for too long, children and their citizenship rights haven't been respected. That must change. The government should make an immediate start to ending the use of this fee to raise revenue for the Home Office. Now, the SNP has also responded to this, and they have said in reply to the court's ruling that the Home Office's exorbitant fee for children to register as British citizens is unlawful, and after consistently calling for sky-high fees to be slashed. The SNP's immigration spokesperson, Stuart MacDonald MP, who's consistently backed the 2-year campaign by Amnesty, the project for the registration of children as British citizens and others, said that the ruling is a vindication of the campaign and that the Tories must immediately heed the ruling, urgently stop the immoral profiteering of children with an automatic right to citizenship. Now that's nice to hear a really strong statement from the SNP that it's time the British Immigration Service took this seriously. Now, moving on to, we can actually, we're looking here at, this is a landmark ruling. A landmark ruling usually means that this is some kind of test case, really. It's been put in the public eye deliberately to raise the issue. The question now is, what will the Tories do about this? Will they react in the way that is hoped, or will they just kick it into the long grass?
Yes, the latter, I suspect.
How on earth can they defend this, though? I mean, are they using...
I don't think they even attempt to defend it. They just...
They don't care?
No, they don't care, and they bluff and bluster. We've seen Boris doing it so often, and that's exactly what... And it is Priti Patel's department, isn't it? The Home
Priti
Office?
Patel is now the Foreign Secretary.
She's
at the Home Office now, I beg your pardon.
Yes,
Home
Office. So, no, I don't see them, I don't, you know, it's very stressful.
Amnesty International, UK Children's Human Rights Network, have handed a 40,000 strong petition calling upon the Home Secretary, which is, as you say, Priti Patel, to remove any element of the registration fee over and above the actual cost of the administration, and to exempt the entire fee in case of children in local authority care, introduce a waiver of the fee in the case of any child who is unable to afford the administrative cost of registration. You have to ask yourself, how is a child going to afford over £1,000 to pay a fee to get a British passport?
Yes, yes.
But the parents, you know, are often poor. They have no money of their own.
If they have parents.
And that's if the children are not unaccompanied,
yes.
in which case they have nobody.
Yes.
But this is this is actually not to do with immigrants. This is to do with children who are maybe the sons and daughters of parents from abroad, who have never actually been registered as UK citizens, despite having the right to that by dint of being born here.
Yes.
I mean, the idea of this just seems to me so crass and so horrible. But it's not, as we know, it's become normal for the Conservative Party to behave in a crass and immoral way.
Yes.
Now we're going to move across the Atlantic now to talk about Mr. Trump.
To another crass and immoral administration.
The US House impeachment of Trump set the stage for trial in the Senate this week. So the impeachment of President Trump in the US House of Representatives on charges of the abuse of power and obstruction of Congress sets the stage for a historic trial next month in the Republican-controlled Senate on whether he should be removed from office. It was unclear on Thursday how or when that trial might play out after the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she might delay sending over the articles of impeachment to the Senate in order to pressure that chamber to conduct what she viewed as a fair trial. The question now is, will Donald get a fair trial? Because the Senate is controlled largely by his own party, by the Republicans. I looked at the numbers of Republican senators, and they don't have a big majority, but they have something like 52% of the seats in the Senate.
Yeah. So it would only take 3 or 4.
Yeah, it doesn't take many to sway, to be swayed.
It.
Trump has said the ball was now in the Senate's court. He said now the do-nothing party want to do nothing with the articles and not deliver them to the Senate. But it is the Senate's call, Trump said on Twitter. If the do-nothing Democrats decide in their great wisdom not to show up, they would lose by default. Representative Steny Hoyer, the #2 House Democrat, said on MSNBC that the Democrats would like the Senate to first approve a $1.4 trillion spending plan and a trade agreement with Canada and Mexico before turning to the impeachment. He said the Democrats were also concerned that the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, may not allow a full trial. McConnell has predicted that there is no chance his chamber will convict Trump. It's very hard to believe that Mitch McConnell can raise his right hand and pledge to be impartial, Hoyle said. The mostly party-line votes on Wednesday in the Democratic-led House came after long hours of bitter debate that reflected the partisan tensions in a divided America and made Trump the third US president to be impeached. Republicans have argued that Democrats were using a rigged process to nullify the 2016 election and to influence Trump's 2020 re-election campaign. While the Democrats have said that Trump's actions in pressuring Ukraine into investigating Joe Biden, a leading Democratic presidential contender, were a threat to democracy. Trump is certain to face more friendly terrain during a trial in the 100-member Senate, where a vote to remove him would require a 2/3 majority, so it's not a simple majority that's required. That means at least 20 Republicans would have to join the Democrats in voting against Trump, and none have indicated that they will. Pelosi said that after the vote, she would wait to name the House managers who will prosecute the case until she knew more about the Senate trial procedures. She did not specify when she would send the impeachment articles to the Senate. Republican Senator Ted Cruz said that it would not bother him if Pelosi did not send over the impeachment articles. My attitude is, okay, throw us in that briar patch and don't send them. That's all right, he said on Fox News. We actually have work to do. Trump, 73, is accused of abusing power by pressuring Ukraine to investigate Biden, a former US vice president, as well as the discredited theory that Democrats conspired with Ukraine to meddle in the 2016 election. The Democrats said that Trump had held back $391 million in security aid intended to combat Russian-backed separatists, and the coveted White House meeting for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as leverage to coerce Kiev into interfering in the 2020 election by smearing Biden. Trump is also accused of obstruction of Congress by directing administration officials and agencies not to comply with lawful House subpoenas for testimony and documents related to the impeachment. Mr. Trump, who is seeking another 4-year term in November 2020 presidential election, has denied wrongdoing and called the impeachment inquiry launched by Pelosi a witch hunt. So we can see a very divided American political system. Both sides seem to be really dug in for a fight here.
Yes, yes.
But it seems to be widely predicted that the impeachment will not happen.
Yes.
Because the numbers don't add up in the Senate.
Yes, but what might happen is that the Republicans are now a bit twitchy about Trump.
Yeah.
And he is losing popularity.
Yeah.
Do they want to risk losing the election?
Well, the thing is, as it's been pointed out, that Trump has now been impeached. You know, the term for being accused of this
is
officially,
attached to him like
and
a
a
big
trial
label.
has now been set. So whilst he's innocent until proven guilty, this is definitely going to colour people's opinions.
Yes.
The question is, by how much?
By how much, exactly. So I suppose what will happen is it could be swung by a similar type of thinker to the people in the Northeast who voted for Boris Johnson.
So you think perhaps a tactical vote might happen? Or in the Senate, I mean, we're talking about senators, the upper house.
No, I don't think it's about tactics. I think it's about the kind of people who are voting for him.
So you believe that will affect the numbers who might vote for him in the next election?
Yes.
Do you feel that it's going to detract from his current popularity?
Yes.
Will it affect it?
It absolutely has to. But there will still be that hard core that might just swing it in his favour. But I don't think it'll be quite such a landslide as it was for Boris Johnson.
Yeah. It also... there's a lot of things that this depends upon, because from this side of the Atlantic it's difficult for us to judge this. My understanding is that there is testimony evidence and transcripts of the telephone call where the alleged offence occurred, and that evidence is actually there, although the Republicans are refuting this.
Well,
there isn't evidence.
They are at the moment, and we've seen people in this country refuting the evidence of Boris Johnson's blatant lies on television, and yet they're still voting for him.
The other thing that struck me about this is there's a similarity here between the way the American press is going for Mr. Trump and the way the British press went for Mr. Corbyn during the general election, where smear campaigns were launched by somebody. In Corbyn's case, the mentioning of anti-Semitism, which became more than a rumour, you know.
Yes.
But with Trump, this is very different. The media is very much gunning for him as well, and I know Trump has a very tempestuous relationship with the American media.
Well, he's I was going to say something beginning with P, off, but
it's annoyed.
But but he hasn't set out to be accommodating to the media, and the very opposite, and there's a price to be paid for that.
Well, he also is, we know he's prone to anything that the media comes up with that he disagrees with. He just labels it as fake news, whether it's true or not.
Yes.
And this seems to be the catch-all phrase to end a conversation and to get you banned from a press.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we'll move on from Mr. Trump, since really this is mainly an American issue. But coming now to Spain, part of Spain, which is Catalonia. Catalonia, yes, okay, so the Catalan president has been barred from holding public office by court in Barcelona. Now, the pro-independence leader of Catalonia's regional government has been barred from holding public office for 18 months over his refusal to order the removal of pro-Catalan independence symbols from buildings, the court in Barcelona said today. The ban handed to Quim Torra by the Barcelona court for disobedience could prompt snap elections in the wealthy northeastern territory. Torra's term as regional leader is set to end in 2021. The sentence is open to appeal in Spain's Supreme Court, meaning the ban, if it's upheld, could take months to come into force. Torra's office had no immediate comment to make on the ruling, a spokesman has said. And since taking office in May 2018, Torra has repeatedly clashed with Madrid, most recently calling for a new vote on self-determination for Catalonia, as protests over the jailing of the 9 independence leaders were staged in Barcelona. The court case stems from Torra's refusal to follow the orders of Spain's Electoral Committee and to remove symbols supporting the jailed and exiled Catalan independence leaders from public buildings during April's general election campaign. The court has also fined Torra about 30,000 euros, roughly £25,700. In addition, so I mean, they're really gunning for Quim Torra, trying to establish or trying to rub out any signs that that Catalans are still dead set for independence, and they're very angry at the 9 political prisoners who still remain in jail.
Yes, that was the real catalyst, jailing those politicians for such a lengthy period of time as well.
I don't know about you, this action, to me at least, seems intensely petty.
Oh.
Removing banners and things like that from public buildings seems an awfully low blow, really. I mean, they're obviously trying to make sure that any mention of political prisoners is erased.
Yes.
Yeah. It is like erasing an entire period of history from the Catalan people, in an attempt, presumably, just to rub it out so that people don't know about it. Moving along now, it's been a successful year for Scottish Social Services. The Scottish Social Services Council, known as the SSC, successfully delivered its major digital transformation programme in 2018-2019. This included several new and upgraded systems alongside new IT equipment during 2019, at the same time as a 35% increase in applications to the register in 2020. A date for mandatory registration for support workers. These are just 2 of the highlights from the 2018 and 19 annual report of accounts published today. So the SSC, which governs things like care assistants and caring professions, is a professional body, and it seems to be doing its job extremely well by all accounts. They've also said that we intend to continue to embed management and governance improvements into the way that we work, so that we're efficient, effective and accountable. So their annual report highlights several areas, one of which is a primary function is to register people working in social services. The number of applications and renewals we receive and the process during the year continues to grow substantially, with 35% more applications received. So it's a popular job choice for many people. Okay, so we're seeing an expansion in the popularity of the caring professions in Scotland.
That's good.
Something which has gone unremarked in other media. And of course, this is a direct result of the Scottish Government's policy on healthcare being free, personal care to the elderly.
That's right.
It's actually generating thousands of new jobs.
Well, how clever is that?
And the new jobs are mostly going to young people who go through college and come out with the qualifications necessary to do this work.
That's right,
and it's a fairly challenging job, is it not?
Oh, yes, very much so. I had the pleasure of teaching a youngster in 2nd year, and she and I got on quite well, and she was in care. and she was able to come and visit the farm and be sort of part of the family for sometimes, you know, a day or a few hours or whatever. And I taught her how to ride my horse and look after the lambs and that sort of thing.
So you had some experience of this as well.
Oh yeah,
the care profession, what it means.
She was a very clever girl, but her learning was limited because of all the other things that were piling in on her life.
So very important now for
to get this stability. She was very lucky in that she was sent to the school that I worked at, because it has a history and continues to look after youngsters like her.
Well, we've run out of time, sadly,
oh, no.
I'm afraid. It goes past so quickly.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for watching the programme tonight. At the end of the show today, we'll be running a short commercial for our crowdfunder. So if you value, and I hope you do value our programming, and you want to see more variety of programmes from Broadcasting Scotland, please follow the screen instructions that are on your screens now to support Broadcasting Scotland and to donate. And that's about it from the Scotland at 7 team this evening, and I'll be back again on Monday, I hope. In the meantime, from everyone at Scotland at 7 and the Broadcasting Scotland studios, a very good night to you.
How do you mean no more commission?
Well, no one in Scotland can commission an idea. You know, if I went to BBC Scotland and I said, oh, I've got this great idea for a sitcom, I've got this brilliant idea for a drama, you know, there isn't one person in Scotland that can okay it unless it goes through London.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Full Scottish. What's happening today?
Hello and welcome to the Full Scottish here on Broadcasting Scotland.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
That need, that desire for independence is ever stronger than perhaps it was in 2014, so there's an obligation that we've got to give leadership to that campaign. That's what Nicola Sturgeon as our First Minister has been doing.
My feeling about Boris Johnson is he can't be trusted on anything.
That is now and forever will be known as the rape clause.
I'm old enough to remember going into Europe in '73, and I remember how much of a razor's edge that was, Ballinstone. And I think we made it by 53%, if I remember correctly, for going in. And ever since that time, England particularly has been pretty much schizophrenic, down the middle about whether it felt British or whether it felt European. And that schism, that crack has remained throughout English society ever since.
Scotland means business. Scotland's voice won't be stilled, it won't be silenced, it has to be heard.
About the work that's been done by Broadcasting Scotland in giving community activists, yes activists, Scottish activists a platform other than the traditional media outlets.